Hey guys, it's Matt Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about goblins. That's right, gonna be talking about goblins finally. This deck is sweet. Uh, I mean, I don't know what to say about it to start off because this thing is awesome. But look at this guy. Look at this dude. Oh, he just wants to help. Oh, he wants to give you a hand. Oh, he's so nice. What a nice guy. Wants to give you a whole bunch of mana. This is gonna be sweet. I love this deck. Bam. Probably one of my favorite decks uh, ever. Probably pretty close. At least some sort of the typical goblins archetype. Um, yeah, there was maybe like Growatog or something like that. That deck was pretty sweet. Um, I like really broken things that are really sweet. So yeah, something like Growatog is pretty sweet. That might be my first kind of. I don't know. But I'm a big fan of Merchant Scroll into Gush. So one of the reasons I like this deck so much is that it's very it's kind of not your usual sort of like mono red style of deck. If you aren't familiar, like this deck does play a lot of like guys and stuff, but it doesn't play like a typical like mono red sort of burn deck or something like that. In fact, it doesn't. Most of the time, it doesn't even play any burn spells at all. So what it ends up doing is just being like a resource sort of attrition style deck. And that's really what you're aiming for, is just to really deny them their stuff, and then you're fine like trading all of your guys one for one with them, because you have like a lot of stuff that cantrips or tutors for stuff, or just drawing a bunch of cards in general. So it's not too hard to really get ahead of people, especially since all your stuff that does these things are all creatures. So like they have to spend cards on them, and you're still able to, like, if they can't answer them, like you can kill your opponent with them. So and the deck is pretty fast. You can actually kill, like, in the, kind of not very often, but like you can you start with like Lackey into like, say, a War Chief or Lackey into Siege Gang, and then like you can drop like multiple pile drivers or something like that, um, and then you get them turn 3. So yeah, first turn Lackey, hit him for 1 into War Chief, then drop like uh, pile driver, and then untap, and then let's see, I think you need another random dude, so you just like another 1 drop or 2 drop or 3 drop, and then you'd so 1, 2, 3, 4 guys outside of one of your pile drivers. So that's 9. So +8 to each of those guys, so it's 9, 9, and well, it's a bunch of damage. I'm trying to do the math. Oh, I think I'm totally wrong, but you can get to turn 3 kills with either like facilitate with basically Lackey into like Siege Gang or War Chief into like pile drivers or whatever. So you can do lots of damage that way. Deck's pretty strong, pretty strong. It's certainly not as fast typically because its game plan isn't like a typical aggressive deck. You're fine with, like, you can be like fast and just beat them down, and like untapping with a War Chief is pretty sweet because you can just drop a bunch of stuff with haste, which is typically pretty good. And those kind of openings are obviously very good against the control decks, because the only way they have to like kill a lot of your stuff is through sorcery speed sweepers, Or I guess they could be playing route, but I've never seen that before. But hey, it's important to play around that. I guess maybe that could be a possibility in the future. um, but let's take a look at this deck list. Bam, here we go. So basically all it is just typically just goblins and lands, and that's it. And you're so just a base mono red deck, but you can splash other colors. But typically, like, this, nothing here is going to really look too weird, especially since we don't have Aether Vial in this format. I don't think you can go below 24 lands. I think 24, 25 is fine. I've seen people play kind of weird stuff like multiple, like 4 Siege Gangs. I think that's probably too many. I think 3 is a good number. Um, and then I think I've seen people not play 4 Fnatic, which is like the weirdest thing ever. Like Mog Fanatic was, in case you guys don't know, was really, really good back in the day, because it basically could kill everything. And in this respect, it can also help us with our mana denial plan. So like it kills birds and elves, and then Port can tap stuff down. So it can help a little bit with that. So it's a little bit less of a full-on thing, as in like Legacy Goblins has a much bigger, more robust mana denial thing because they can play Vial, of course, and then keep their mana open to Port, as well as they can easily play Wasteland, which I don't know if you can really do here. Maybe at least if you're mono red, you could probably fit some in, but I'm also playing Duress main deck because I think it's just better than like. I mean, maybe Goblin Sledder's a little bit better. Like if I was just, like Goblin Sledder would be fine if I was mono red, but I think Duress is just so good. But I think I'd rather just play that main deck instead of like extra Skirk Prospectors or Goblin Sledders or something. I mean, those cards are good, but unless I'm super underestimating Goblin Sledder, I think I'd rather just play the main deck Duress, and that saves a lot of space in the sideboard. Now, sideboard this isn't set in stone. I mean, you do want at least 2 to 3 Pyrokinesis, at least 2 Anarchy. I don't think I'd really go over under on those. Some number of Crypts, probably some number of Pyrostatic Pillars, and then you definitely want Drowner's Crusade against Engineered Plague. Or I guess you could side in Drowner's Crusade against like stuff that's like, if you have cards that are just dead or bad in a certain matchup, you can like side in Plague just because it's a slightly better card. But typically, I'd only be siding it in for stuff with Plague usually, or even like some of the red hosers, obviously because Drowner's Crusade makes them black. So that's good. And then there's other stuff too. Perish is good. Perish is a good card. Same thing with like a Null Rod or something. Obviously has slight dyssynergy with Crit, but that's not a big deal because the decks are sideboarding them and they can't really. It's not really dyssynergy unless you play them at the wrong time or whatever. But yeah, so let's see what else. I mean, you could play Pyroblast and stuff, but I think you're probably already so good against them. I would worry about it. And then, let's see. And then, like, do you want a 4th Duress or another Therapy? That's important. I don't know really what would be best. And then, of course, there's a lot of other good sideboard cards in black too. But let's. But yeah, so you get the idea. You get the idea. All right, so we're pretty good versus blue control decks. Of course, now this is because there's a lot of card advantage. So basically, it's Ringleader, specifically Ringleader and Matron. That's a big part of your card advantage stuff. And then of course, Gem Palm is really good as your cycling Terminate, or I should say your cantripping cycling Uncounterable Terminate. So that guy's really good too. So all these things add up to being very good against any sort of attrition style stuff because you can pretty much outgrind, well, basically everyone for the most part. So that's pretty sweet. You might have some trouble with some of the like super heavy like board control decks. That might be something to watch out for. Those can be pretty tricky. But it's hard to say because like there's a lot of different kind of board control decks you could make. But something like Slide would be kind of Astral Slide would be pretty difficult to beat. I'd imagine, especially if they had stuff like Starstorm. Although I do play a Starstorm in my Slide list because it's another sweeper and it cycles, of course, when it's dead. But yeah, being an instant speed sweeper is pretty powerful. So you kind of have to watch out for that kind of stuff. So. But pretty good versus these kind of decks. Against a lot of other hate, something like Cop Red is a lot easier for you to deal with. I mean, you do have to like play into a Wog or something, but you can overload a Cop Red pretty easily because you just have tons and tons of dudes. So either they don't do anything and you eventually like start sneaking damage through, or they die. I guess it's like dead or less dead, but yeah. So a lot of that stuff's not even something like Sphere of Law is a little weak versus Pile Driver, and then also Anarchy, as well as Drano's Crusade too. It's pretty similar in speed to Sly, I'd say, minus just like being able to burn people out randomly, like with double Fire Blast or bolt, whatever. But yeah, it is as fast, but it does have like you are, well, somewhat more stymied by creatures, but then sort of not in its own way. Other people can't be too aggressive against you, especially if you have a war achievement play, because you can just drop a pile of dudes. You can tutor chain like matron into matron into matron into pile driver or something silly, or there's a lot of stuff that can happen. So people have to play pretty not aggressively, pretty defensively. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. And there's a lot of weird lists. I'm not sure. I guess I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I've seen people play weird stuff. I've seen people not play matron in their list. There's an article on the Premodern website about goblins that came out recently. I'll go ahead and put that link in the description. But yeah, they didn't play matron in their list, which doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why would you not? Like, that's what makes the deck good. Like, in fact, it's even better in this format than other formats because the creatures are overall worse. So not only is it still do everything it does, but it's contextually better as well, because everything just sucks more. I mean, basically, like the creatures, you don't have all the insanity we have today, like the kind of stuff we got, but like, yeah, it's a lot better, like, contextually. So I don't know why they wouldn't play stuff like that, or people, like I said, not playing 4 Mog Fanatics. That's weird. And then also, I think I wouldn't play any Wastelands before playing Ports, because Port lets you keep your land, so you can, and it does more tricks, and it's better versus basics too. So just simple stuff like turn 1 Dork of Duress, turn 2 port their land, and then turn 3 drop your matron and tutor for something, or drop your war chief or whatever when they can't counter it. I mean, it does so much, and you don't have to miss land drops and screw over your tempo. And this deck is, I mean, it has an actual mana curve that goes up to 5, so you really want to be being able to curve out and just keep playing a lot of spells every turn, and you're going to need a lot of land for that, especially if you actually want to board them, so like, but the nice thing is that, like, you do get a little bit more leeway with your Lackey, which is kind of nice. So unlike like in Legacy, obviously, or Old Extended, most of the decks don't seem to be as good, especially a lot of the blue decks. They're a lot worse because they don't have Force to, like, easily stop your first turn Lackey, or Brainstorm, which is obviously really big for them finding, like, removal and counters and stuff in time. So yeah, most and the combo decks, I don't know. I mean, I guess they're kind of as strong, but not being able to play, like, Tendrils, of course, for the Storm decks, and some of the other decks are a lot slower too. A lot of the Tinker style decks are quite a bit slower because they don't have Grim Monolith. So at least I'm pretty sure Grim Monolith is banned off the top of my head. Pretty sure. So everything else is basically worse, and the only thing we don't have, of course, is Recruiter, which I don't think is a particularly reasonable card to have access to for the most part. And so, but the other nice thing is our mana base is actually pretty good for the most part, so we can splash another color, either black or green. Green, of course, gives us, like, well, basically Naturalize. Naturalize is the big one, and I guess there's other stuff you can play too. I mean, you can play cheaper stuff like Crumble or Emerald Charm, if you want to be a little bit more mana efficient. And there's, of course, stuff like Tranquility or Tranquil Domain or whatever. Now those are good too. So I guess there's other stuff to play for green. But black is, I think, just better in general because it gives you better combo hate. Because the best combo hate that you can really play in most any deck is probably be like the Duress and Therapy. And that's really the biggest problem for Goblins, is like they can just kind of ignore like all the card advantage stuff that we're doing, and they can just kill us, which is obviously not good. So Duress I think is really good, and then or Therapy. I mean, you could play main deck Therapy instead of the Duress. I mean, but like you have to be a little. I'd want to wait till the meta game sort of settles down until like, you know, um, something recognizable, so you can sort of have an idea of what you want to name in every matchup. But like if you're playing against like weird brews every other round, like I mean, you're just gonna be with it and it's gonna be worthless. So yeah, probably just the rest is better. Maybe like a Therapy afterboard or something. Um, and Black also has really good stuff if you want to grind. Of course, that's one of the original reasons why the old standard deck played Black, was because of Patriarch Spitting. But you can also get Oath of Ghouls, Oversold Cemetery, Recurring Nightmares, stuff like that. And that's all good stuff too. But be careful, because you don't want to overboard. You really want to stick around about 30 goblins. And so my list is 33, and then plus the 3 to rest, and then 24 lands. So I wouldn't take out any more than like another 3 for more combo hate or something. I mean, again, depends on the deck. If you have to, like in Legacy, like if you're boarding a bunch of cards, like 8 or 10 cards or something or whatever, for combo decks, you'll start taking out like ringleaders, because they're a lot worse. Because you don't, like I said, you don't really need to try and grind them out. All you're looking to do is just try and kill them as fast as you can, and then disrupt them along the way. So that's important. But unfortunately, I guess for the combo decks, you're about as fast as they are, at least sometimes. So yeah, they're pretty good, but you can kill on the third turn, which is really nice. So if you don't have any disruption, that is still like better than most decks can do. The nice thing against all the other non-combo decks is that Lackey is probably the best turn one play in the format, really. It's very similar to how Legacy was in about circa 2005 to 2007-ish for a couple years, where not having a good answer to turn one Lackey was a really big problem in the format, caused a lot of issues. It doesn't seem to be as big of an issue here, because it just seems like a lot of people just don't play it all the time, at least like in relation to how good the deck is. So that's, so it doesn't seem like it's worthwhile. At least I think I've mostly given up on the idea of like, oh, every deck needs to have all these answers to turn one Lackey or whatever. Like, unless it becomes like a much bigger part of the metagame, I'm just gonna, not worry about it. And I don't think like warping your decks and playing suboptimal cards or narrow cards is like a good plan. I mean, actually, like if you played stuff like Funeral Charm, I'm okay with stuff like Funeral Charm in some decks, but it's not. Again, I wouldn't really want to try and be like, oh, I have to play all this 1 mana removal and da 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 da. Like, I don't think that's exactly worth it. It's a really great deck, but I mean, there's all these other decks you have to play, and you really want to not have to dilute your deck to, beat maybe one different thing. So, yeah, Goblin Lackey's best turn one play in the format, but like I said, I wouldn't worry about it too much. It's too much. It can be too much effort. There's not a lot of really good 1 mana removal outside of Bolt and Plow and whatever, assorted burn spells. So sometimes it's okay just to be like, well, whatever, and just take the L if it happens or whatever, but at least be better in other matchups. But yeah. So that's. I mean, this deck is, if you're familiar with it, none of this should be too strange or too out of the ordinary for you. I think in the article they decided to play Mog Flunkies. I mean, I haven't even ever. It's been a really long time since I played Mog Flunkies, a really long time. And so I mean, I guess you can play it. I mean, I haven't tested it. I don't think I'd be really wanting to take out, you know, my Goblin Matrons for it. That's kind of insane. And I don't think I'm going to be playing, like, Goblin King main deck. That, I guess I should touch on that too, because that doesn't make any sense to me either. Like, it's just not that good. Like, against other red decks, or at least against something like Sly, like, they'll just kill it. I mean, it doesn't really pump up your dudes, it just dies to burn spells like every other guy, so I'd rather get, like, an actual, like, other goblin with Goblin Matron, and Goblin Matron can still basically trade with every other creature in their deck, so I don't, yeah, like, it doesn't make any sense unless there was, like, a mid-range, like, red deck or whatever that didn't play a lot of burn spells, or like a red-green or red-black or something, where the Mountain Walk would actually be useful. Mountain Walk. Yeah, I wouldn't bother with it. I don't even think I'd play it in the sideboard. Yeah, like I said, I mean, that's kind of maybe a meta consideration, like if you had a meta game where you have all these weird red decks or whatever. I mean, I guess that could be useful, but that's not something I would do. So anyways, I think, I mean, depending on like what kind of combo decks emerge, I think that would be like the biggest obstacle to this deck doing well in pre-modern. But like I said, you can play like you have Duress main deck, and then you have like Tormod's Crypt, and that basically covers pretty much everything else. Against green decks, you have like Pyrokinesis, or I guess Perish if you want to play it. Even oh, what's the guy? Sparksmith. You have Sparksmith, so you could board like a Sparksmith in too, because he's really good against like the green decks that don't have any reach. So like you can just like literally just tap it and just start killing all their stuff, and that's really good. It's really powerful, and it's a good 2-drop. But it's not something I would play probably main deck if I expected any amount of Sly. Although I guess it does trade with stuff. You just really can't afford to be losing any amount of life that you don't absolutely have to, you know, because they'll punish you for it. But yeah, just bringing in like bring in like the 3 Pyrokinesis against that deck, take out 3 other things or whatever. Yeah, I don't know how many Duress I'd play because it's, you know, yeah, I'd probably, yeah, 3 Pyrokinesis, 3 Duress. Anyways, I don't want to go on too long here, but yeah, this is basically Goblin deck for pre-modern. Looks pretty much like any other sort of like Goblin War Chief, Goblin Matron, Goblin Ringleader, all that stuff. Very similar. You can do a little bit of stuff with it, but it's pretty much the core is still there. So it's pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet. I like it a lot. I think you guys will have fun with it too if you've never played it before. And it's even relatively cheap. I guess even ports are a little bit cheaper now because the reprint. So I don't think anything in the deck's really that expensive. Yeah, I think it's all pretty good, pretty affordable, pretty sweet, pretty fun. So yeah, that's it. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you have more fun playing this deck because it's sweet, because I love it. All right, have a good day. Bye.